Hello, friends, and welcome to a very special episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Poorly Written. My name's Luke, and together we've been rewriting my first feature screenplay. Now, we've made it about halfway through, so I thought it'd be a good place to pause and take stock of what we've learned so far. So today I've got a special episode where we look at my own personal top 10 screenwriting mistakes. There's a mix of story problems, script formatting errors, and style inconsistencies. So there's pretty much something there for everybody. All right, let's get into it. Number 10, overuse of montages. Montages are a spice that should be used sparingly, but in my early writings, I used them over and over and over again to the point where it was almost comical. They can work well to illustrate the passage of time or people getting better at something like the classic training montage. But if you use too many of them, then your film will start to feel more like a music video. I challenge you to see how many montages you can cut from your script. Instead of a whole sequence, think about the one shot that can tell that part of your story. For example, if your story needed to convey the fact that your protagonist had worked at a pizza shop all evening, you don't need to have a montage of them making multiple pizzas. You can just show them making a pizza wearing an apron covered in tomato sauce and flour. The audience will figure out that that's not the first pizza they made that night. Number 9, missing scene slugs. I made a ton of formatting errors in my early screenplays, and one of the most common was a lack of proper scene slugs. New locations require new scene slugs for a couple of key reasons. First, it's important for clarity in reading the script. You want to make sure your reader never gets lost as to where a particular scene is taking place. Second, correct scene slugs are needed for production. Your producer is going to break down your script based on the number of locations and the times of day. So if you leave out scene slugs, then you risk not planning effectively for the actual shoot. A good way to think about when you need to end a scene and start a new one is to think about the actual filming. Are you moving the camera to a new distinct location? Is there a lighting change to indicate a different time of day? Or is there some sort of state change with your set, your props, or your actor? If your answer is yes to any of those, then you need a new scene. Number 8, inconsistent character familiarity in dialogue. Ever watch something and the dialogue just doesn't feel real? Sometimes this is due to writers having characters say the thing needed, so
the movie can happen.
Sometimes it's because the writers are working out their own personal issues through the characters. And sometimes it's because the characters aren't interacting with the appropriate level of familiarity. There's a delicate dance of familiarity and deference that occurs in every real-life conversation. And when you're watching something and that level of familiarity is violated, either feels super awkward or just plain inauthentic. So how do you avoid this? Well, for me personally, I love to eavesdrop. Listening to real people have real conversations is a big part in how I learned to write good dialogue. So ditch the earbuds and listen to the folks around you. Pretty soon you'll be able to pick out the differences between strangers, people on a first date, and lifelong friends. Number 7, double beats. Almost always scripts work best when everything is moving forward. This applies to character growth, plot, and even locations. In my early scripts, I wrote a lot of scenes that accomplished the same things. They weren't introducing anything new about the characters, advancing the plot, or building the world. They were doubling up on things the script already had. And to be honest, I still have a lot of double beats in my first drafts. But now I'm better at finding those moments and fixing them in my rewrites. A good way to do this is to list all of your scenes, then write a 1 or 2 sentence description for each. If you end up with descriptions that are similar or exactly the same, then you've got scenes that either need to be combined or it's time to break out the shredder. Number 6, characters talking about things we've already seen or are about to see. This one really drives me bonkers, and it happens so much, and not just in my first feature script. I see it in big shows and movies all the time, and I feel like it demonstrates a fundamental mistrust of the audience. It's like the writer saying, hey, I don't think you understood the significance of the moment you just watched, so I'm gonna have a character recap it for you. I'm sure sometimes this is necessary, but try to use the medium of cinema to replace characters planning or recapping. For example, if you have a character ask, what are we doing tonight? You don't need to have another character respond with a list of things that they're planning on doing. You can just cut to the next scene and see them doing the things. Number 5, overwritten action blocks. It's important to keep in mind that a script is not a final product. It's a guide for the production. and the production is a guide for the edit. And things will 100% change in each of those stages, so not everything needs to be written out in explicit detail. Remember, you're going to have actors, directors, set designers, makeup artists, cinematographers, and a ton of other talented folks all collaborating to tell the story. You want to give them the important details, then allow them the freedom to interpret those in the best way possible. It's a delicate balance because you don't want to be too vague, but you also don't want to be so prescriptive that your action blocks become needlessly complicated and restrictive. A good exercise is to first separate your action blocks into distinct actions. This will make your script longer, but it's a better gauge on how long those moments will actually take on screen. Then, after you see how long your script has become, go back and try to make each action block as short and concise as possible. Does the new version still communicate what needs to be seen on screen? If not, what details do you need to add back in so that it does? Number 4, misused parentheticals. One of my most common new writer mistakes, and frankly something I see in a lot of scripts, is a misuse of parentheticals. These are supposed to indicate how a line should be said, not what is being done while the line is being delivered. If you're trying to decide whether something should be in a parenthetical or not, consider this. Are you describing a physical action or emoting? If it's something like standing up, that's a physical action and so should be in an action block. If it's something like sarcastic, well, that'll affect how the actor emotes, so it should be in a parenthetical. And you only really need to call it out when there's a mismatch between the words being said and the emotion. For example, you don't need to put sincere before, I love you so much. But if you want, I love you so much, you probably need to add sarcastic. Number 3, too much exposition. A super common problem in my early writing was an over-reliance on exposition. There were numerous scenes in my first feature script where characters were just sitting around and talking. These sorts of scenes are incredibly boring for a number of reasons. There's no conflict in an info dump. We aren't learning anything new about the characters. And in general, they're incredibly static and uncinematic. For the most part, I try to eliminate these scenes, but there are moments where characters need some new information to continue the plot. Or the audience needs some so they aren't confused about what's happening. But how do you handle it? First, you can trim the expository dialogue down to a bare minimum. Keep taking more and more of it out until it no longer makes sense. Then you'll see what you need to add back in. The next trick is to hide the exposition inside of action. A rather well-known and pretty basic version of this is the walk and talk, where characters deliver the exposition while moving through a location. Think about your characters in the setting. What makes them unique? What would your characters naturally be doing while they had this conversation? And to take it a step further, how can you add conflict or reveal something new about the characters during this dialogue? Number 2, excessive shoe leather. Shoe leather is the over-explanation of logistical details. It's similar to exposition as both are forms of overwriting, but exposition is overwriting in dialogue, while shoe leather is overwriting in action. It's showing the characters go from point A to B to C before finally ending up at D. And if we're not learning anything new about the characters or the plot or the world, we don't need to follow them through all those steps. The script can just start with A and then go right to D. The first draft of my scripts, even my more recent ones, are notoriously heavy in shoe leather. There's just something about my brain where I need to write out all the steps initially. I actually expect this problem, so I don't beat myself up while writing, because I know I can fix it in my revisions. So how do you identify shoe leather? In the same way that you found and eliminated double beats, look at the descriptions of your scenes. If you just have characters traveling from one place to another or completing parts of the process, consider if you really need those moments to tell your story. A good rule of thumb for writing is to get into scenes as late as possible and leave as early as possible. An audience's understanding of the cinematic language and storytelling in general will help them figure out what was happening before a scene started and what transpired after that scene ended. Number 1, lack of character decisions. I saved this one for last because not only is it one of the biggest problems from my early writings, it's also something I commonly see in scripts. So often things just happen to and around the protagonist. They're not doing anything that affects the plot. In fact, you could take them out of their own movie and the greater story would play out exactly the same. Fundamentally, storytelling is based in drama, and drama is based on dilemmas. And dilemmas are decisions. You need to force your characters to make decisions, and these decisions must have consequences. The consequences then create a new set of problems that requires a new set of decisions, and this goes on and on until your story is complete. I challenge you to think about your scripts. When does your protagonist make a decision that alters the course of the story? Does this decision make things easier for them, or does it make it harder? Even the right decision can make things harder for your character. And the harder you can make things, the more opportunity you have for conflict and real drama. And that makes a story that audiences will care about. And that'll be a wrap on this special episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Poorly Written. I hope you enjoyed this look at my top 10 early writing mistakes. Let me know in the comments if there's mistakes you used to make, or if there's something you see in movies and TV shows that bothers you, and maybe I can cover that in a future video. Until then, be good and write well.